Take it away.
Okay. So I'm presenting On a Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen. I'm going to start with a quote by the great William Defoe. Great theater is about challenging how we think and encouraging us to fantasize about a world we aspire to. So the first time that A Doll's House premiered, well, it was published in 1879, and then it was first premiered 3 weeks later on December 21st of 1879 in the Royal Theatre in Copenhagen, Denmark. The first actors were Betty, which is the First Lady. She played Nora, and then Emil, who played Torvald, and he's in the middle, and then Peter Gendorf, who played Dr. Rank, and he's on the end. According to Michael Meyer in his book titled Ibsen, every performance of the first showing was sold out. Meyer also wrote about how in Germany there was another showing who starred Hedwig Niemann-Raab, and she was portrayed to play Nora. Well, she didn't like how the play ended, so she refused to do it because, and I quote, she would never leave her children. So to prevent it from being rewritten in a lesser dramatic fashion, Ibsen rewrote it and had it so Nora didn't leave. Well, in this version with the alternate ending performed in February of 1880, and after a really bad review and lots of protests from people who had seen the original and didn't like the new ending, Niemann-Raab finally agreed to having it where Nora left. So the original play was put on, and that one was much better. Okay, so for act, I'm just gonna give a summary now. In the first act, we meet Nora and her husband, Torvald, Nora's friend, Mrs. Lind, whose husband just recently died, and Dr. Ring and Krogstad. It opens at a Christmas party on Christmas Eve, and we find out that Nora spends lots of money and that her husband gives her lots of money to spend. Her husband also treats her like a doll and kind of like a child, like her and his children are equal, even though she's their mother. We also find out that Mrs. Lind is looking for a job since she no longer has Mr. Lind to support her. And we also discover that Nora forged documents when her husband was ill to be able to afford money to get him to, I believe it was France or somewhere like that. And so she forged these documents to be able to get the money, and she owes a huge debt of money because of the forged documents, because she had to get money to pay for them. And the debt that she owes is actually to Krogstad. And so Krogstad is about to lose his job because of forged documents himself, so he blackmails Nora because he knows that she owes him money, and to keeping his job, since Nora's husband owns the bank that he works at, he blackmails Nora into convincing her husband to let him keep his job. Then in Act 2, we find out that Torvald, Nora's husband, gives Mrs. Lind Krogstad's job because he's not that big of a fan of Krogstad. And then Nora also reveals to Mrs. Lind about her debt and how she owes Krogstad so much money. We also learn that Dr. Rank is very ill and is about to die, and we also find out how he's going to leave a letter to Nora with a black cross on it if he is going to die or when he is about to pass on. Dr. Rank also confesses his love to Nora in this act. In Act 3, we learned that Mrs. Lind and Krogstad had a past relationship where she was engaged, well, not engaged to marry him, but she was very much in love with him. And so she decided that in order to better her mother and her family, she would marry somebody richer, so that way she married Mr. Lind, who had more money. Well, after they rekindled their old love, Mrs. Lind and Krogstad decided to run away together and start a new life. Dr. Rank leaves Nora a letter with the black cross on it, meaning that he had discovered that he is about to die and his death is imminent. At this point, Krogstad had already left the letters in the mailbox for Torvald to read about the debt that his wife had owed when he was blackmailing her. And Torvald reads them, even though Nora didn't want him to, she was like, okay, you know what, fine, just go read it. I'm accepting the fact now that this is what had happened. And he also at this point had confessed that he would do anything to save Nora's life if he had wanted to, so she figured he would have been a little more understanding since she had done the same for him. Torvald reads the letters that Dr. Rank had left about him dying, and as well as Krogstad about Nora and her debt to him. And then she also receives a letter from Krogstad apologizing for blackmailing her. But Torvald decides that he wants to just move past it, and that he's going to pretend it never happened, since the only people who know about it are him and her and Krogstad, and he has decided to stop blackmailing and leave the live and let live. So, but at this point, Nora doesn't want to just be on her, like live with him in this pretty little doll house where she's just how she is. So she decides that since she doesn't know who she is and she's tired of how she is now, she's actually just going to leave, and so she moves on for her own life. Okay, so the initial audience reaction. Many people actually, they very much enjoyed this play overall. Although the ending was extremely controversial and upset many people, they still really enjoyed it because it kind of gave a different outlook to how things were back then. Because in the 1800s, it was completely unheard of a wife leaving her husband and children. So it's kind of like a different world to them, and they liked hearing about those different types of things back then. And so then I have some themes and motifs. We're going to start with themes. One big one that showed up a lot was parent and children obligations. The parent must be, you see this a lot with how Torvald and Nora act towards their children and how they talk about their children, as well as it's mentioned many times, Nora and her father, about how the corruption and like the greed and like the money hungriness had been passed along the line, and Nora oftentimes worried that maybe her children would end up like her and want lots of money. And it's also mentioned how not only can like the bad parts of the parents be passed on, but the good parts can as well. And then we also have the theme of the sacrificial role of women. We see how Mrs. Lynde had left the poor Krogstad at the time to marry a richer one, just so that way she can support her family and be with, like, support her family and have them have money. And then we also see how Nora sacrifices to Torvald multiple times throughout the play, especially when she forges those documents and goes through everything that she had to get the money, and possibly even corrupt her name had she been found out prior to when Torvald had. And she also, when she leaves her children, she's sacrificing that motherly instinct and love for her children that she has to better herself. And sometimes sacrifice doesn't benefit you, but also sometimes it does. Okay, and then we have motifs. The one that I found was like a big one was Nora's definition of freedom. It says at the beginning of the play, she starts it with, I'll be free when my debt is paid, and once my debt is paid, then I'll be able to move on with my life and everything will be fine and dandy. But then, like, once Krogstad starts blackmailing her about paying her debt, she kind of comes to the realization, like, why am I so worried about paying this debt? Like, is this even that big of a deal? Like, I shouldn't, like, sure it's a big deal and I want to pay it off, but is that really going to make me be free? And then by the end of the play, we realize that she realizes she'll be free when she leaves, and then she can finally go and find out who she is as a person and enjoy her life from there. So then, that was A Doll's House in overview, Skyview. It caused a huge uproar when it first came out, but it was still very successful, which is kind of strange because you would think, oh, people didn't like this play, but how could it still be successful? But for some reason, it was, and sometimes it shows how much times have changed, because now women can just leave their families if they feel like it. So, the end.